What if the face you've seen on red carpets and stadium stages was hiding one of Hollywood's darkest secrets? 9 women, dozens of messages, a trail of silence stretching back over a decade. This isn't just another rumor, it's a reckoning. Stay with us as the veil lifts on Jared Leto's carefully protected image. If you're shocked by what you're hearing, don't look away. Hit subscribe, click like, and stay with us through to the end of this series. The truth is layered, disturbing, and still unfolding. Your support helps bring these hidden stories to light. Hollywood glittered on the surface, but behind its glowing facade, rumors simmered, quiet, persistent, and deeply unsettling. Jared Leto, Oscar winner and rock frontman, had long captivated the public eye. But in early 2024, whispers turned into a chorus. It started not with a lawsuit or a press conference, but with a screenshot. Former model and DJ Leto posted a throwback to her Instagram, a Facebook status from 2012, a sharp jab wrapped in irony. You're not really in LA until Jared Leto tries to force himself on you backstage at an M83 show in a kilt and a snow hat. Beneath it, her caption cut deeper. He was a creep then, still is. 15 years later and Hollywood's most persistent predator is still roaming free. The reaction was immediate. Ally's post cracked open a dam of private messages, DMs from women who had remained silent for years. One wrote, "Yeah, I was 16 in Arizona. He and his brother invited me and my friend onto their tour bus after the show." Another shared that her friend had been fully groomed and subjected to years of abuse, then silenced with a non-disclosure agreement. What had once been whispered in green rooms and backstage corridors was now spilling into public view. One woman recalled a concert in her teens where Leto, then in his 30s, flirted with her, got her number, and invited her to a party. Her parents stepped in, blocking what might have been the beginning of something darker. Another claimed her band was kicked off their first major tour after reporting Leto for inappropriate contact with underage fans. "He crushed our dream," she wrote. The backlash was deafening. Ally's Instagram story included a satirical Onion headline from 2023. "Jared Leto wonders if he'll ever get in trouble for that stuff he's been doing." Her comment? The Onion never misses. It wasn't just sarcasm, it was indictment, steeped in the pain of too many voices. But behind every accusation, a question loomed. How had this remained hidden in plain sight for so long? Leto's throwback post didn't just spark a reaction, it unleashed a reckoning. Within hours, her inbox began to fill. Former fans, acquaintances, and complete strangers started sending private messages. Their words were cautious, often hesitant, but carried the same heavy theme. They'd either experienced Jared Leto's disturbing behavior themselves or knew someone who had. One message read, "I was 16 in Arizona. Jared and his brother invited me and my friend onto the tour bus after the show." A nervous emoji followed, hinting at years of confusion and discomfort. Another message said bluntly, "My friend was manipulated and hurt for years. She had to sign a confidentiality agreement to make it stop." There were stories of concerts where Leto, then in his 30s, had allegedly approached teenagers, asked for their numbers, and invited them to parties. One girl said she was 15 when he approached her. "He invited me out, but my parents found out and didn't let me go," she wrote. Others weren't so lucky. A young musician recalled how her band was dropped from a major tour after she reported Leto for interacting inappropriately with underage fans. "He used his power to silence us. We were devastated." Some messages questioned why he hadn't been named during the height of the Me Too movement. "Everyone assumed he'd be exposed back then." Someone wrote, "I know multiple girls who were underage when they were with him. Others were treated horribly, like they didn't matter." Ally also shared a satirical headline from The Onion. "Jared Leto wonders if he'll ever get in trouble for that stuff he's been doing." Her comment was simple. Even fake news hits the truth sometimes. The implication was clear. These weren't just rumors. They were stories that had floated around for years, unspoken but known. Jared Leto's team responded swiftly, labeling the claims as demonstrably false. But that only fueled further doubt. Why had so many women, independent of one another, described such similar experiences? The silence had been long. Now, it was breaking. As more accounts surfaced, the stories began to blur together, not because they lacked detail, but because the details were hauntingly similar. The alleged pattern was clear: approach young fans or aspiring professionals, initiate late-night contact, build rapport, then shift the tone into something overtly suggestive. What began as admiration often turned into discomfort, confusion, or silence. One anonymous woman who spoke with Air Mail described meeting Jared Leto at a cafe in 2006. She was 16. Her mother was outside waiting for a table when Jared, seated nearby with then-rumored girlfriend Ashley Olsen, grabbed the girl's arm gently as she passed. A brief conversation followed. He asked for her number. That night, her family phone rang. Leto was inviting her to a party hosted by him and nightlife promoter Brett Bolthouse. She declined. She didn't even have a license. But the calls didn't stop. She recalled him phoning late into the night, asking her who she was dating, what her experience was. Conversations she didn't fully understand at the time. Her mother, overhearing one of the calls, would later verify the story. She recognized the inappropriate tone immediately. Still, the girl never reported it. She didn't even know what to call it back then. In another account, model Laura LaRue said she met Leto at an animal rights benefit in 2008. She, too, was 16. Her mother stood by her side when he asked for her number. LaRue later visited Leto's home multiple times. She said he flirted openly, once even walking around completely unclothed in her presence. She was young and unsure, thinking, maybe this is how adult men act. Leto's team responded by claiming nothing inappropriate had occurred, and insisted Laura later sought to work as his assistant. But Laura denied ever applying. Her own words painted a different picture: confusion, discomfort, and a loss of innocence too early. Whether the offer of work was real or fabricated, it complicated things. Was it grooming disguised as opportunity? Even more unsettling was another woman's story. She'd been texting Leto while underage. When she turned 18, his tone suddenly changed. The shift, she said, was immediate and deeply telling. These accounts weren't filed in courtrooms, but they echoed in the public square. Each story may not have legal weight on its own, but together, they built something harder to ignore. A chilling portrait of power unchallenged, and a system that allowed it to continue. By the time Air Mail released its exposé, it wasn't just allegations. It was a mosaic of testimonies stretching across states and decades. 9 women, each with unique experiences, but telling similar stories. And though most chose anonymity, their words painted a portrait of disturbing consistency. One anonymous accuser remembered being contacted by Leto when she was still underage. Their conversation started off friendly, but once she turned 18, his tone allegedly changed overnight, shifting toward explicit topics. To her, it felt calculated, like he had waited just long enough to appear within the law, while already having built a connection rooted in imbalance. Another woman detailed how she'd been invited to Leto's home multiple times. According to her, he kept a specific area where his guests, mostly young women, were asked to sign non-disclosure agreements before seeing him. They were all model types, very young-looking, she told the reporter. The implication was clear. This wasn't casual behavior. It was organized, secretive, and shielded by legal barriers. Some spoke about being silenced not through threats, but by power. If you told anyone, your career was over before it began, one woman claimed. For many, the decision to stay quiet wasn't about forgetting. It was about survival. In an industry where names open doors, his held weight. Backlash wasn't reserved for accusers alone. One artist said she was removed from a tour after reporting Jared's alleged behavior with underage fans. It felt like the floor dropped out beneath us, she said. We went from the dream of our lives to watching everything fall apart because we spoke up. Jared Leto's spokesperson responded to the claims, asserting that the communications were non-sexual and appropriate, but even that statement acknowledged interaction had occurred. These weren't anonymous trolls. They were women who had met him, worked near him, been in his space. And though no criminal charges had been filed at the time, the pressure mounted. Questions echoed louder. Why had no one intervened? How long had this behavior been tolerated in whispers and shadows? Hollywood, it seemed, had known. And now the world was listening. As the allegations continued to circulate, so did the debate over what consequences, if any, Jared Leto might face. Legally, the terrain was uncertain. Most of the reported incidents occurred years ago, often outside the time frame typically allowed for criminal prosecution in California. But recent legal changes, especially those protecting survivors of childhood abuse, meant some claims might still hold weight in civil court. Criminal law experts weighed in. They noted that persistent, inappropriate contact with minors, especially when ignored boundaries were involved, could tip into stalking or harassment. In other cases, patterns of grooming might be argued if a relationship began before a legal age and escalated after. One former prosecutor explained, "Even if nothing overtly illegal happened at the time, the repeated behavior can demonstrate intent, a critical piece in any investigation." But beyond the courtroom, the court of public opinion had already begun its deliberation. Leto's career, once seemingly untouchable, now hovered in uncertainty. He was set to star in major film projects, including Disney's next Tron installment and a live-action Masters of the Universe remake. Yet whispers suggested studios were growing uneasy. Brands and producers often avoided even the hint of controversy, especially when it involved minors. Concert venues and tour sponsors reportedly reviewed contracts. No cancellations had been announced, but internal discussions were underway. "Once that first domino falls," one industry insider said, "the rest could follow fast." Some defenders claimed it was a coordinated smear, time for attention. But many others, even without first-hand knowledge, couldn't ignore the sheer volume of testimonies. The stories were not wild tabloid tales. They were detailed, personal, and disturbingly consistent, and history had shown what came next. For men like Harvey Weinstein or R. Kelly, it often started just like this. One brave voice, followed by another, then a wave. In each case, official investigations had followed public reporting. Could that be the future for Leto? So far, no charges, no lawsuits, no official investigation confirmed. But the conversation was no longer behind closed doors. More women were speaking. More eyes were watching. And Jared Leto, once shielded by status, contracts, and silence, was now facing something far more powerful, collective memory. This time, the silence was breaking, and it wasn't stopping. What do you think? Should Jared Leto face industry consequences even without a formal investigation? Do you believe Hollywood protects its own too long? Share your opinion below. Were you surprised by the sheer number of stories that surfaced? Let's talk about it. If this story kept you hooked, there's more where that came from. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next exposé. Another celebrity under fire. Another wall of silence beginning to crack. Like the video, share it, and join the conversation that Hollywood wishes would disappear.